This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We have some good news. Adam Burke, I've turned everything in.
Heyo.
There we go. I was stressing out that first hour. Everything's in. I am relaxed. Let's start the show.
Noon Pacific time, 3 Eastern was our deadline for our March Madness betting guide, which, reminder, will officially be out later on today. Kudos to Adam and the whole crew, though, for not only bugging all of us hosts to get the write-ups and the picks ultimately into the guide, but then to edit it and turn it around for production. So,
everyone, I'm going to be a good teammate and just say yes.
It is.
Editing is a very tough job.
Oh, you're just saying so you, when you were an editor, you didn't do anything. That's what that comment tells me.
No, I mean, well, I've never played the role of editor. I've had to edit stuff before, but let's just say we have a network of wonderful hosts that are very eloquent with the gift of gab. The writing at times can be a challenge.
That said, you will enjoy the picks. We know that for sure when the betting guide comes out a little bit later on today. It's
hard to write.
We'll go through our best bets at the end of the hour here today, as usual. We'll get into a little NBA action this hour as well. Dogs were barking yesterday. Will they bleeding into today? We'll also have Dan Shulman, ESPN college basketball lead play-by-play man, join us in 30 minutes, see who he thinks can win it all now that the bracket is officially set. Maybe some of those higher seeds he thinks could potentially be vulnerable. And since he's already shifted gears from the SEC tournament final to spring training, maybe squeeze in a little Toronto Blue Jays conversation, as he is the voice of the Blue Jays up north as well. We are going to kick things off, however, this hour, diving into some of the early line moves we've seen in these early round games in the tournament. Let's hit the open for Do You Approve This Move?
Odds move up, odds move down. Let's see where the odds are moving today in Do You Approve This Move?
All right, let's get into it. Little to no movement on the first 4 games tomorrow from Dayton. So let's jump from Tuesday to Wednesday. Lehigh and Prairie View A&M. Lehigh out from 1.5 to 2.5 point favorite. There is even a 3 out there in the market. And SMU versus Miami of Ohio. SMU, we were talking about this earlier because you were on the air with Tim. They opened 8.5 point favorites, got bet up as high as I saw at DraftKings 9.5. This morning it was down to 7.5. I'm seeing 6.5 now.
Yeah. So, and this always depends on where you look. So when we were on the air, the first number that populated on the screen was actually SMU minus 7.5. Then it gets up to, as you mentioned, 9.5 throughout the day, then comes back down. So either way, there's been the what's the office snip snap,
yeah.
right? Like there has been a back and forth with this number. So at this point, if you've been paying attention, whatever side you like, you should have the best of the number. If you like Miami, Ohio, you probably should have that 8.5, 9.5 range. And of course, if you like SMU, you should be able to lay that 7.5. I wrestle with this quite a bit. I would lean a little bit toward Miami, Ohio. I am of the mindset that you can't just keep doing this. You can't be so reliant on your first shot offense. You can't be unable to generate second chance opportunities. They're a bad offensive rebounding team. Having said that, obviously this is such a role reversal for Miami, Ohio, a team that went through the MAC, obviously undefeated until they lost in the tournament to UMass.
Yep.
But a team that played the role of favorite throughout. Well, they didn't cover every number, obviously. This is a little different for a team that's got an offense the way that they do. That's a big number. So I would very much be on the side of Miami, Ohio, especially at that 8.5.
I didn't bet it. I understand why people were gobbling up that number at the peak of the market, though, exactly what you're saying there. And with Miami of Ohio, I think a little something to prove after losing to UMass, but also pressure kind of off, as you were alluding to, now that they are in the field in an SMU team that a lot of people are questioning why they're in to begin with as well. So I like that angle, taking the points. I wonder how far down this ultimately will get bet before we see a little bit of that buyback. Looking ahead to Thursday, Louisville and South Florida. Louisville from 7.5 down to 5.5. So we're seeing the dog get a little bit of play there. And then St. Louis, a team that was really trendy for a good chunk of the season, had a lot of success, started to falter late, taking on Georgia in one of the more interesting games of the week. Georgia from 1.5 out to 2.5, though.
Yeah, this was one, the South Florida game, if we go there really quickly, this is the one that I was kicking myself a little bit in the sense that I did not get to it the way that I wanted. We know that South Florida, they can play a very fun style of basketball. They can get up and down. Third active longest winning streak. They're on a really good run here. But this comes from that like NATO type of tree Hodgson does where we talk about up-tempo. We're talking about taking a lot of threes. We're talking about prioritizing shots within 4 feet of the basket. This is the third best team in the country, South Florida, in taking shots within 2 feet, or excuse me, within 4 feet. They're third in average 2-point attempt distance. It's everything you want in a team. They're very analytically sound. I thought they could stay inside of that big number. I still think maybe 5.5 is playable, but it's always hard when you see the 7.5 and it comes down. And as far as Georgia and St. Louis is concerned, I've hit this a couple of times, but do kind of believe that Georgia can get this done against St. Louis. Billikens did show quite a few warts down the stretch. And I think that maybe is somewhat troublesome as they head into that game with the Bulldogs.
All right, I'm going to hit you with 3 movers with the big spreads, and the market is moving in favor of those lower seeds here. Duke and Siena. Duke out from 27.5 to 29.5 point favorites. Illinois from 20.5 to 24.5 against Pennsylvania. And then Houston, a team I'm pretty high on, big picture here in the tournament this year, out from 21.5 to as high as 24.5 in the market, largely 23.5 against Idaho Vandals.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we talked about. You know, you look at these teams that are really up against it. Market believes that there's a pretty big gap, and I think that's the case as well. All of these teams. I think one of them that interests me the most was Illinois, but again, we've moved really quickly. Illinois, with the way that they play, especially against a lesser opponent, taking as many threes as they do, I do think that there is the potential for a really big blowout there. Houston, Idaho is going to be interesting because you can cover that number, but you do wonder if maybe you just go like with an Idaho team total under as opposed to laying such a big number because they could just suffocate the life out of the Vandals' offense.
That's kind of my thought process on this one. And you think about Idaho, this is a team that, yes, wins the Big Sky tournament, but they were 7th seed to do so. The regular season was not friendly to them for the most part. So Houston, a team that is clearly significantly better. I never really liked the idea of laying that big of a number, so maybe that is a good approach. We also have here to round out Thursday, Wisconsin and High Point, big swing there. Wisconsin down from 12.5 point favorites to 9.5, and then Gonzaga from 18.5 out to 20.5 against Kennesaw State.
Yeah, I'll just say the High Point number is the best one I got. I grabbed 12.5 as the first bet made yesterday, so we'll see if they can do it. If it gets back up to that 10.5 range, obviously I still think that's playable against Wisconsin.
Let's move ahead to Friday. Alabama-Hofstra, one of the more interesting games, and this number is kind of all over the place a little bit here, from 11.5 to 14.5 to 12.5. 13's on the board as well right now. Alabama, of course, got the news their second leading scorer was unfortunately detained and arrested for marijuana possession yesterday, so we don't have any further updates on his availability or if he does play, what that mental capacity and state is going to be like, but that's an interesting one for sure. Iowa out from 1.5 to 2.5 against Clemson. Some total movement on that one toward the under from 131.5 to 128.5 as well.
Yeah, and Massaro was on the under for this one, was he not?
Yes.
Yeah, so
I mean, it's just two really slow-paced teams going head-to-head. He got it, I believe, at that 130.5, kind of in between that number, but as low as 128.5 now.
Yeah, I think out of all of these, the Alabama one's obviously going to be the most interesting. What happens with your second leading scorer? Will he be available? What the market wants to do. And again, Hofstra, I wrote about this for the guide. That is a team that checks the boxes. Slow pace, high rate of threes. You want that against a team like Alabama to take away those possessions and potentially go for the upset.
Big spread as well. UConn Furman from 18.5 out to 21, largely 20.5s in the market here right now. Furman, another one of those programs, though, that won their conference tournament as a 6th seed. So UConn, a big favorite, understandably so.
I mean, understandably so, really? Do we trust them? This has been one of the worst covered teams in the country.
And yet all they do in the tournament is cover. What's the streak now? It's like something ridiculous in the tournament dating back to the last 2 years. I mean,
I'll take the current form right now, which is a team that has been awful against the number 13 and 21 against the spread. This team has been. You look at the stretch, down the stretch of the regular season. If you go back to the end of December, so January 4th and onward, they had 4 covers the rest of the way in the regular season. They've been a wildly overvalued team, and of course, a 2.5 point favorite. They lose by 20 to St. John's. I just don't really trust them. Kind of like Massaro's angle here of just going Furman. Screw UConn. I don't know. They haven't shown us this season. You're right. Yep. The NCAA tournament, it's fine. But this season with a different team, they have not proven to be as good as the market thinks they are.
That's a good thought process, though, for tomorrow. We're going to do that meaningful or meaningless when it comes to some of the trends, ATS betting-wise, but also bracket-wise. So that'll be a fun conversation. I will make sure to include UConn as a part of that. We've also got Virginia out from 17.5 to 18.5 point favorites against Wright State. Purdue and Queens. Purdue from 22.5, and our graphic might be stale because those 24.5s are gone. We're up as high as 25.5 now in favor of the Boilermakers.
Yeah, not big on either team. Virginia's going to be an interesting group, too, and I think we're seeing a theme here, right? For the most part, these big favorites are getting bet up.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this next one here on the board, Santa Clara and Kentucky. I was a little bit surprised to see the market move in favor of Kentucky, considering they're a program I think a lot of people view as rather vulnerable here in the first round. But out from 2.5 to 4.5 some spots, 3.5s as well. Iowa State from 23 to 25.5 against Tennessee State. You just said it, another one of those massive favorites that's getting bet out here once again.
Yeah, Kentucky, the first number we saw yesterday was 1.5 in favor of Kentucky, so up to 4.5. There's been a lot of movement there. you do wonder with Santa Clara, they get the big win over St. Mary's. Obviously, a lot of people thought they weren't maybe going to make it in, that they needed that, and they obviously get it. But I don't know, man. I kind of like the Santa Clara team, and I don't want to be undervaluing Kentucky, but up to 4.5 now, I think you could convince me to bet the Broncos there.
I'm going to cruise through the rest of these, and you just tell me what stands out. St. John's from 9.5 to 11, as high as 11.5 in the market against Northern Iowa. Kansas from 12.5 to 14.5 against Cal Bap. Arizona 29.5 out to 31.5 against Long Island. Utah State from 1.5 to 2.5 is what I'm seeing market wide right now against Villanova. And Missouri, Miami, some under money, a 3-point swing from 150.5 to 147.5.
Kansas also one of the bets that I have, late 13.5 with Kansas. I think this is a terrible matchup for Cal Baptist. I don't know what to make of them in the NCAA tournament as a whole, but I do think the way that Cal Baptist plays, you're going to be able to effectively just grab your missed shots, your lesser version of dump and chase basketball like we talked about with Tennessee, and hope you can get second chance opportunities against Kansas. I don't think that's the case.
For me, on that Utah State-Villanova game, I thought when it got out to 3.5, that was maybe a little bit aggressive here, so I understand the 2.5 back to that. I ended up playing Utah State on the money line. I think they're the better of the two teams and didn't want to bother with the short spread in that spot. But that said, the concept of this bit is, do you approve the move? And I do, in favor of Utah State. I think that seeding was ultimately wrong between the 8 and 9, should have been flipped. Okay, we got to step aside here, but do want to remind you, as we mentioned off the top, that our March Mania betting guide is going to be out later on today. Inside it, we're going to have profiles of every single tournament team, trends broken down for every round, strategy for not only your bracket, but betting from a futures perspective from our VSiN top experts. You can be a full-time subscriber and get this for free in addition to everything else we do at the website, or you can just buy it as a standalone $19.99 right now. vsin.com/guide is how you can find it. Again, that's vsin.com/guide.
Hey, let me get your attention real quick, podcast listeners. It's March, which means the madness is officially upon us, and the folks at VSiN have really gone crazy with this one. I'm being told that for just $29.99, you can get unlimited access to VSiN Pro through May 1st. I'm talking picks through the tournament, public betting data for every single game, plus sharp tools, projections, articles, and more. Just click the link in the description to get started. It's March, baby. All right, now back to the show.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Money Moves, this segment of the program is sponsored by Upside, where you can turn your gas purchases into real cash back when you download the free Upside app today. Plus, when you download Upside and use the promo code SPORTS, you get 25 cents back per gallon on your first tank fill up as well. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you, back here live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Heavy college basketball day throughout the course of the 2 hours that we're on with us. If you missed anything, or do you approve this move, betting lines that we thought might be the right angle, bracket sides we think are more difficult, you can always download Money Moves wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes. I know where you want to go here because we have a rundown and we plan these things. But I still think we should stick with college basketball because I think there's a couple of games that I would really like. I don't know if you have anything.
I put this in the rundown for you.
Okay. Look,
so if you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it.
I like the NBA, which we could touch on maybe in a little bit, but it is the first day. It also sneaks up on me, too, because as I just said to you during the break, we had to record our promos and whatnot. Tomorrow, it already gets started with the first four. We'll have plenty of that, of course, for the program tomorrow as we get ready. But I did want to ask you about a couple of things, and maybe we can ask our guest coming up about this as well, considering his how many Big 12 games did our guy call?
He did, I think, like all through the quarterfinals to the championship.
Right? Okay, so Dan Shulman will be with us, ESPN lead college basketball play-by-play guy. We'll get his thoughts on him. A team that fascinates me to no end that actually I think got seeded very high that comes out of the Big 12 is BYU. And BYU is a team that I cannot wait to see in action. Again, 6 seems kind of high considering where they were, but this Cougars team is going to be a pretty interesting follow depending on who they get coming out of NC State and Texas, which ties into what our game is going to be tomorrow. But BYU is one of those teams I think is somewhat overseeded, and we don't really – I mean, we always kind of – not always. Anecdotally, you always like these teams that play either Tuesday or Wednesday that can make a little bit of a run. I think Texas or NC State might be one of those teams. In my bracket, for example, I had Gonzaga eliminating NC State because I don't think I would be entirely surprised if NC State, a team that is somewhat underseeded, beats Texas and then runs into a BYU team, which has been abysmal defensively down the stretch and into the Big 12 tournament, and finds themselves on the wrong end of a loss. And all of a sudden, we're looking up, and it's a Saturday, what would it be, a Saturday, and NC State is playing. against Gonzaga?
I do not think that BYU is good.
Okay.
I think A.J. Devonta is freaking amazing, but I am not a believer in the BYU Cougars at this point at all. So I'm very curious to see what that number ultimately would be when it comes down. Obviously the opponent has to be decided first. They're playing in Portland to get things started, but they're a team that I was looking to fade openly here in the tournament.
Okay, I like that because that is one thing that I think really stuck out, and I'll be fair too. I used NC State in my bracket here. I think Texas could do it as well. When you're talking about beating BYU, Texas offensively is a team that really does have the ability. You're talking about 13th in the country in offensive efficiency. In SEC play, they're floating around 4th. They don't play very quick, but they shoot the ball well, even though they don't take a ton of them. And I think they're serviceable enough on defense. SEC play, they really struggled, but that was one where, we're always looking for upsets. We're always looking for runs. You're trying to find where some of these things might happen. And again, cream eventually rises. I think Gonzaga takes them out. But I wouldn't be surprised of these first 4 teams that we're talking about, outside of maybe Miami, Ohio, that gets hot because of their capabilities. They're a 31-1 team. I think that's the side you're looking at for one of these teams playing either tomorrow or on Wednesday that we see play potentially into the weekend.
I'll hit you with those spreads real quickly. So this NC State-Texas game, 1.5 in favor of the Wolfpack, total 158.5. UMBC and Howard for the 16. It is a 1.5-point spread for the Retrievers, which I'm just excited to see their social media account go crazy. Total 139.5 there as well. The Wednesday games, Prairie View and Lehigh. Lehigh laying 3.5 right now, total 143.5. And then Miami of Ohio, we mentioned all of the movement on this game. Peaked as high as 9.5-point dogs, currently down to 6.5 right now, total 164.5. Real quickly before we move to go ahead.
Can I just note real quick, NC State and Texas, you said what was the total right now? It was down to
158.5.
That's a miss on us. But Riley should have used that in the Do You Approve This Move segment. Opened 165.5 yesterday when Tim and I were
huge swing to the under then. With that, before we move too far off from the Big 12 concept, a team that you have been adamant about throughout the course of the year is the Arizona Wildcats, who, of course, do earn one of those top seeds as expected. A lot of people, though, come tournament time, doubt what this program can do, doubt Tommy Lloyd. Will it be different today? Do you have them ultimately winning your bracket?
I do.
You do?
Yes, I do.
All right.
I do have Arizona
winning the
winning
bracket
the whole thing.
where your mouth is. Let's go.
I will say, now, I do believe in Arizona. They're in such a tricky part of the bracket overall. If you notice in our Call Me Crazies, I had notes that we talked about Michigan, we talked about Duke. We didn't really hit on Arizona, and obviously I think we could talk about the South too, because Florida's in a really interesting matchup, including a national title potential rematch with Houston at one point if they run into each other. But if you just look at the portion of where Arizona's at to get to just the Elite Eight, I mean, the Villanova-Utah State winner, I think you're going to be able to dispatch them. I don't think there's going to be any worry there. But on the other side, more than likely, it's going to be one of Wisconsin or Arkansas. Those are 2 high upside offensive teams that you would have to end up taking out. And then we'll see what comes out of Gonzaga and Purdue. But it is going to be a pretty challenging run once you get past the second round for Arizona. I do believe in them, but you see this right here. Like the teams that they would have to potentially face, Stormy, Wisconsin and Arkansas, just one of those 2 against Arizona is going to be one of the more fascinating matchups that we're going to see just because of the upside for both teams on offense. They have some strong downsides on defense, but I do think that is going to be in a Sweet 16. Like I have them taking on Wisconsin. My belief in the Badgers. But I do think that is going to be a potential slip-up spot for Arizona. But I buy it. I buy what they are defensively. I buy how good they are. I buy the continuity. There's been some offseason play, obviously, with them that ties in to Tommy Lloyd and what he's done over this, across the pond. I think that this is a really good team. So, yes, I do have Arizona. Shockingly enough, one of the favorites winning my bracket where the mouth is, as you said.
Worth noting as well, because we did say this in the last segment, their opening round game against Long Island bet out to over 30 now. 31.5-point favorites in that game. Arizona to win it all, the 3rd shot on the board right now, albeit tight at the top. Duke is plus 340, Michigan plus 370, Arizona plus 390.
Fins up.
Then 4th on the board is the aforementioned Florida Gators, who, of course, win the national championship a year ago. Can they go back-to-back? What do you think?
I think they make it to the Final Four, and I think that so I have Arizona beating Florida.
And that's how they go down.
In the national championship. I think they could lose to Houston, obviously. That would be a big revenge spot. That means once you get to that point, all of this is going to be pretty interesting. I mean, look, they have a Sweet 16 rematch with Vandy if if chalk plays out. And Vandy's an interesting team, too, to that point, because they're really solid on defense. We've talked about them a lot. The way that they can defend, their offense leaves, I think, a little bit to be desired at times. But the way that Vanderbilt got back on track at the end of the year, they start the season undefeated. They lose the three straight, including a very tight game with Florida when they played them at home 98-94. Kind of right the ship, taking on some of the lower-tier teams in the SEC. But then they have that stretch where they lose to Missouri, they lose to Tennessee, they lose to Kentucky, and you're thinking, all right, what exactly is this team? But they've really turned things around with the way they've played defensively, and I've been wildly impressed with watching them here. And I think that they are, I shouldn't say destined, but I would trust that they're going to be able to take care of McNeese. Obviously, they're 5-12 there. I think they're going to be able to dispatch whoever comes out of Nebraska and Troy, which we could talk about because I think Nebraska might be a little vulnerable there in that spot. And that leads you to the Sweet 16 in the second weekend against Florida, which I am going to be very fascinated by. I believe in Florida. I think the turnaround for the guards is legitimate. But out of all these one seeds in terms of level of faith and given the way the brackets break down, I think they're probably third on my pecking order of the ones that I have confidence in that they'll be able to make it.
And obviously the fourth one to get in is a 7-loss team this year. But I think to your point about Vanderbilt, that'll be an interesting conversation to get into with Dan, if that's a team we want to ask him about, because he just called the SEC tournament title game as well. And as you said, the way they started the season, one of the hottest teams in all of college basketball, took a step back once we got into SEC play, but kind of finding their footing once again here down the stretch.
Am I being too simple-minded when I say Nebraska's in trouble against Troy?
Is that just because they've never won an NCAA tournament game?
No, I think it's the same thing that we talk. It's all the same points I bring up all the time. So you've heard this before, but Troy plays slow. Troy takes a ton of threes. We've seen Nebraska as down the stretch they have faltered a little bit here themselves. The defense has been pretty good, but you've seen in some of these matchups here down the stretch, the defensive performance against UCLA was very poor. The defensive performance against Purdue was pretty poor, and it just the makings of an upset, taking away the possessions, shooting a ton of threes. Troy's just one of those teams that could potentially get it done, but obviously I don't have any bets on Troy. So.
And they're physical, tall, those are things that'll help them in that matchup as well. Nebraska started the season 20-0. They set a record for conference road wins. It was a season for the ages, yet a questionable first-round matchup for them here and an attempt to finally win the first tournament game in program history. This should be the year, but will it be, I guess, is a more interesting conversation than you would have thought on the surface.
Illinois is pretty interesting, too, man. We've seen their volatility on defense as well, and all of a sudden we're going to look up and the Tar Heels are playing Houston in the Sweet 16. It's going to be annoying.
They're minus 400 to make the Sweet 16.
Illinois?
Yeah. I don't know how they couldn't. That was almost one of my my Call Me Crazies earlier today. I'm like, I know this is a gross price, and if you have the bankroll to lay $4, more power to you, but it's kind of like one of those things we talk about in the draft. Granted, it's not fully set, but you look at their path, how do they not get there? They should absolutely get there.
Penn, winner of North Carolina, and VCU.
It should be.
I could see them losing to UNC.
It'd be pathetic.
They don't force a ton of turnovers.
Legitimately, my reason for betting Houston to make the Elite Eight, which I do have as one of my best bets when we get to it at the end of the hour, is because I think they're going to play Illinois and beat them. Reminder, everybody, like we talked about, that free Upside app. Get in there now, download it for free, and start earning cash back on every fill-up. Promo code SPORTS will get you an extra 25 cents per gallon.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
The bracket is set. The lines are out, and with that, we're locked and loaded all day, talking all things college hoops. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Back here, live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Money Moves. Excited to have Dan Shulman join us here on the Progressive Guest Line, ESPN's lead college basketball play-by-play man, calls the Saturday primetime games of the week, also the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays. So naturally, Dan, when I texted you earlier this morning, you hardly even looked at the bracket, you said, because the turnaround is so quick for you with spring training. What is this time of year like for you, going from one thing to the next so fast?
It's nuts in a good way. So it happened the other way at the end of the season because the Blue Jays went right to Game 7 as the World Series, as you know. So that was November 1st, and my first basketball game was November 6th. My last basketball game was yesterday, Arkansas-Vandy, and a couple of flights later, here I am in Florida, and no game for me today. The Blue Jays are on the other coast, but I spent a few hours at their player development complex just saying hello to people, meeting some new players, talking to people, that sort of thing, just trying to get up to speed. So my first game's not till Wednesday, but Yeah, in a perfect world, I'd love like 5-6 days to just turn my brain off, but I'm very lucky. I love what I do. I love both jobs, so ready to jump in.
All right, Stormy wants to talk about this thing going on in college basketball, but we have to sneak in a baseball question. I'm going to do it at the top here, Dan. What do we expect from the Toronto Blue Jays this year after a strong season?
I think we expect another really good year. I mean, baseball, in my mind, is the most unpredictable of the four, major professional sports in North America. You never know. Like, are you going to be healthy the next year? Is your pitching going to hold up? Can 36-year-old George Springer have the kind of year that 35-year-old George Springer had? That sort of thing. So, I think players' production fluctuates more in baseball, good and bad, from year to year than it does in most other sports. But they've got a lot of really, really good players. They did lose Bo Bichette, great hitter, obviously, but they made some nice signings. They signed Kazuma Okamoto from Japan. They traded for Jesus Sanchez, and there's no question their pitching is deeper. Signing Dylan Cease in the offseason, I think their pitching is going to be significantly better. So I think they're really, really good, but I also think the Yankees and Red Sox and Orioles are pretty good too, and you never sleep on the Rays. It's the American League East, so I've got them as a playoff team, and once you get in, you never know.
Yankees are your favorite in the AL East right now, plus 180. Blue Jays plus 250. And in terms of the World Series, fifth shot on the board to win it all after what was, as you said, a really fun run a year ago. Please indulge me, though. We do have heavy college basketball today. And like you said, you just got off of the SEC tournament title game yesterday. We were having a discussion last segment a little bit about Vanderbilt and their potential. They start the season on such a high, falter a bit in SEC play, but then get back to an SEC tournament title game. What's your perspective on Vanderbilt, and could they have the potential to make a little bit of a run in the tournament?
I don't think there's any question they have the potential to make a little bit of a run. I mean, first of all, they lost to a really good team yesterday. Like, Arkansas is playing very well. John Calipari is getting absolutely the most that he can out of 7 guys, and one of those 7 guys, Darius Acuff Jr., he might be the best player in the country. He really might be, and I know DeBonsa might go first or Peterson might go first. And, Boozer's been absolutely outstanding, and he's going to win the Player of the Year. He'll win the Wooden and the Naismith and every other award they've ever created, and deservedly so. But right now, the way Darius Acuff Jr. is playing, with his ability and how many minutes he's playing and just the never-ending determination and effort that you see, I think he's just as important to his team's hopes as Cam Boozer is to Duke's hopes. I mean, I think Acuff is sensational. I can't remember what he had yesterday. I think it was 30 and 11, if I'm not mistaken, 30 points and 11 assists to beat Vandy. But to your question about Vandy, I think they're really good, and I saw a lot of stuff online about they are underseeded, and it sure feels that way to me. Like, not that they should have been a 3, but maybe they should have been a 4. They had a great year, and Tyler Tanner, he's a tremendous player. He's had a great season for them. He just had a rough shooting night. Like, he got to the rim. He's really good at going left and like kind of spinning it up and in reverse layups. And they just didn't fall yesterday. They spun off the rim 3-4 times. He missed some floaters, some mid-range jumpers he normally hits. They might have won the game if he had his typical game. My point being, I think he'll do better in the tournament than he did yesterday. He just had an off day yesterday. So I think with him and Duke Miles in the backcourt, they're dangerous. How far they get, I don't know. If they win their first game, they're looking at possibly a matchup with Nebraska, and then they would play Florida, right, who they just beat by 17 2 days ago. So I think they're really good. And no matter what happens going forward, I think Mark Byington is putting together a great program, and they're fun to watch. They score, they get up and down. It was really fun yesterday in Nashville.
Dan, there's a train of thought, and I'm among those that think this, that there is a gap between these best teams that are 1, 2 seeds and then the rest of the field here for the tournament. You've seen a lot of these great teams up close. Would you follow that same line of thinking that once we get there, once the smoke clears to our Final Four, it would be a surprise if we're not talking about one of these 4 1s or 2 seeds and that everybody else falls by the wayside? There's that big of a gap between the best and then the rest.
I think I do agree to a point. I think I felt more that way a couple of weeks ago than I do now. And one of the reasons why, Duke, Caleb Foster out, Patrick Gungba unknown. Michigan, L.J. Kaysen out. I think that brings both of them back to the pack a little bit. UConn, a 2 seed, not playing great. Purdue, a 2 seed, big win yesterday, but not always playing great, real ups and downs in recent weeks. So I think the gap has closed a little bit. I look at Arizona, and maybe this is recency bias because I just did the tournament, but man, they're good. I mean, they are unbelievably good when Tommy Lloyd's got his 8 guys. And I would put them, I think, a notch above anybody right now. And I don't think I would have felt that way a couple of weeks ago. But I would be surprised if like a 5 or a 6 made it, but we've seen that before. Could Gonzaga as a 3 get there? I believe they could. Could Michigan? Here's one. I think Michigan State as a 3 is really dangerous. Really, really dangerous. Obviously, a great coach, Tom Izzo, Hall of Fame coach. Older players, guys who have tournament experience. They've played together before. They've got continuity. And you look at their bracket. The 1 is Duke, again, banged up. Still great, but banged up. The 2 is UConn, not playing very well, especially compared to earlier on in the season. The 4 is Kansas. You want to talk about ups and downs, and you never know what you're going to get from one day to the next. So if I had to pick somebody beyond the top 8, beyond the 1s and 2s, I think I would pick Michigan State.
One of those 2s I wanted to ask you about is another team you've seen a lot of this year in the Houston Cougars. And they're a team that I have in my Final Four when I put my bracket together earlier today. I feel like from a path perspective, especially with the defense that they have and Kelvin Sampson as a head coach, they can make a push through. How high is the ceiling for them in your eyes? Do you think that they're a true contender amongst that group?
Yes, the ceiling is national championship. The thing that I think is a little bit tougher for them is I think they're in a tough region. I'm a big believer in Florida. I know their guard play hasn't consistently been elite, but it's been a lot better in the second half of the season than it was in the first. The front court is phenomenal. And if Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee and Urban Klobjar, who's been a very good shooter, but if Fland and Lee make shots, that team can beat anybody. And then I think Illinois is great, too, and didn't have them this year, but saw them a fair bit on TV. And they're just so different than so many other teams, and they have so many different guys who can score, and Wagler's so good at the point of attack. So, but I do think Houston, I mean, that Houston-Arizona game in the final, I don't know if you guys saw it, but that felt like a Final Four game in my mind. It really, really did. And they stayed with them for about 36 minutes. So they're physical and tough, and 5 who play as 1. And, you know, they handle adversity really well. And if Kingston Flemings is going to have one of those days, or Emmanuel Sharp's going to have one of those days, so like each of those guys can go off for, 27 in the blink of an eye. I think they can play with anybody. I just think they're probably in the toughest region in the tourney.
What do you think's wrong with UConn?
I'm not going to be able to give you a ton on that because haven't seen them in the last couple of months and was doing Big 12 and SEC games over the weekend while they were playing. So I wish I could give you a better answer. I know they've got some key guys who are young, like guys in key spots who are young. And I know St. John's got them twice. I think the talent is there. I don't think this is as good a team as the 2 national championship teams. Yeah. I think the talent is there. Maybe it's a little bit of youth. I wish I could give you more, but to be honest with you, with the number of games that I do, and we don't do the Big East. ESPN doesn't have a Big East contract, so I saw them once at the beginning of the year and haven't really been able to keep tabs on them over the last several weeks with all the games I've been doing. But listen, Dan Hurley's won 2 national championships. They've still got a great leader in Caravan. They've still got Solo Ball. They've got guys who can make. Mullins is a terrific player. I think, even though he's a freshman, I think he's a terrific player, capable of big things. They're dangerous, but I was shocked. Didn't they get held to 52 points by St. John's? Yeah. That stunned me. I didn't look at the box score. I'll be honest with you. It was just like on my phone as I'm in the airport in Atlanta waiting for my connection last night. But it's 52 points stunned me. They're better than that, but clearly there's something going on. They got to figure out in a hurry.
Dan, in fairness to you, you're a little busy. So
I was going to say, you don't got that much going on, so I don't know. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for making time for us today. We appreciate you. Enjoy spring training.
Okay, guys. Thanks. Good talking to you.
Dan Shulman, awesome to have him on today, especially calling all of the biggest games of the week on ESPN every single week. And now shifting gears to a little baseball. Blue Jays season underway here sooner rather than later. We'll be right back.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
brackets are for everyone, we've got something for bettors. Introducing the VSiN March Betting Challenge presented by ProfitX and Edge Boost. Pick spreads and totals across all 67 tournament games. Earn points for every correct call and climb the leaderboard. The prize is a real $2,000 for the overall champ, $1,000 for second, $500 for third, plus separate prizes for the best first and second half of the tournament. Over $6,000 total on the line. And here's the kicker. If you've got an Edge Boost account, every single prize doubles. It's completely free to enter, free to sign up. No reason not to play. Head over to vsin.com/contest, create your account, get in the March Betting Challenge. Again, vsin.com/contest to get involved. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Heavy March Madness tournament theme to the show today.
That's all we did.
Did get a tweet kind of making fun of me a little bit, but I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. Brad Magnus tweeted us, Stormy, with your Final Four of Duke, Houston, Purdue, and Michigan, is this one of your brackets so you can say you had it? This will be my Final Four regardless. So this is, I had to cement it.
You have Purdue?
I had to cement my picks for the guide. Yes, I think this is the year, okay? Turn things around.
But Arizona's in that region.
Yeah, they are. I'm aware.
It's not
My Final
smart.
Four, I had to submit for the guide. So because
going.
I had to have that selected already. Oh no, this is going to just curry more favor with you and Cohen than me. However, the rest of my bracket, I'm not going to firmly take my picture and send it into Adam until later on today.
Yeah, because you're going to fill out multiple brackets.
I have to decide what I want my bracket to be. I'm allowed to tinker until I make my ultimate decision, and that will be the bracket that is claimed official and put out publicly.
You literally tried to shame people for filling out multiple brackets.
No, I didn't.
You're going to do the same thing.
This is where, you need to listen to the verbiage of what I said. I did not say you can only fill out one bracket. I said you can only claim one bracket. There's a difference. I said, I fill one out with my gut reaction. I fill one out once I've done some research. I fill one out what I want to happen. And then I ultimately make the decision of what my pure bracket will be. The only one that is submitted, official, taken a photo of.
Whatever makes you feel better about yourself.
I hate you sometimes. You just do this just to get under my skin.
Okay, so I just want to note that I just got a text message, and I would like to make it clear. I have Arizona winning the national championship. I have Arizona winning the national championship. To whomever is listening that may concern,
that means
Arizona.
You got a text from Steve. I get it. Appreciate you watching, though.
Yeah.
That's funny. That said, something that we were talking about a segment ago with Dan Shulman, a name that kind of perked your ears a little bit when he was going through some of the contenders.
Yeah.
Michigan State. Tom Izzo and March, certainly a team that I know people like to back. You have them in your Final Four as well.
In my lone bracket that I have filled out, yes, Michigan State is my Final Four entrant from the East, if you want to call it that. So I think that I think he's right. They're about 7-8 to 1 to make it to the Final Four. But everything that we've discussed here, when you look at the way that region could break down, with the fact that UConn is playing as poorly as they have been, Michigan State in the little quadrant, we'll call it pretty, I don't call it easy, but Louisville or South Florida to get out of there, then to take on the winner out of the teams of UCLA, UCF, UConn, whatever it is. I think that is a path they can manage going forward. Should they run into Duke in a rematch, as we saw them fight them pretty tight earlier in the season, only lost that game by 6, and with a shorthanded Duke team at that, maybe that's something to work out for their favor. I do think that Michigan State can make a run here. And then even the top, where we're talking about what's coming out of the top of that region, look, St. John's, Kansas, I assume they're going to meet. Both pretty solid favorites in the first round. What in the world are either of them? St. John's, I think, is playing well, obviously, heading into the tournament. Who knows what Kansas is? We know what the upside that can be. I think there is a manageable path. It is a brutal bracket, and that region looks really tough, obviously. But I do think that Michigan State in that 7 or 8 to 1 path to make it out of this, I don't think that is the craziest thing in the world, and they are one of my 4 Final Four teams.
Okay. Let's get to the best bets, the things that we already have in pocket here. I know you didn't want to make these official money moves plays because you already, you got such significant value on a number that you didn't want to put those out the same way, but still at least worth noting what you do have in pocket here for the tournament.
Oh, yeah, we talked about these yesterday. High Point plus 12.5, Kansas minus 13.5, and then the South Florida plus 6.5. So we persevere and move on, but that was fun yesterday. That's the best part about what the Selection Sunday shows. Love just sitting there opening the app, seeing when they populate and starting to play on some of these.
And a great reminder in the future to make sure that you're tuning into the Selection Sunday programming because as we told you on Friday prior to the weekend, they're saying like DraftKings and Johnny Avello have already said that they're going to have these lines out almost instantaneously once the bracket comes down. That was the case, and you're able to get some pretty favorable numbers. And we talked about it in Do You Approve This Move, how many numbers ultimately have swung since that opener, and a lot of them on sides that we agree with for the most part.
Yep, absolutely. I do have a bet. I didn't put in the doc, but I do have a bet for the tournament that I will add that I have put in the account as well.
Okay, let's do our quick weekend recap as well, because we did have bets on Friday. I know Arizona -3.5. Barely didn't get there for you. For me, I went tough. 1 and 2. I thought Miami was going to be significantly better than they were against Virginia. That was an ugly performance, not even close. I even, for a time, thought about buying in on the second half, like, hey, maybe they'll turn things around and get back to where they were. And it's like, no, I'm just going to stay off. And thank God I did, because it got even worse. Yep. Toledo on the money line did cash. Should have just taken the spread when all was said and done. Oilers Blues over 6.5. However, it did not come through. Looking toward the tournament for me, what I already have in pocket, I did a cheap money line on Utah State -134 against Villanova. And that is still available a handful of places.
I believe.
I do. And I even wrote in my write-up for the March Mania, betting guide that we're going to have coming out later on today. I was like, miss me with all the Mountain West is the worst cover conference in the tournament trends, because I don't care. I like this matchup for the Aggies. Got back on track during the Mountain West Conference tournament. They can build on that with a first round win in the dance. Their quad 1 record, 4-4 this year to Villanova's 2-6. Something that I was laying into a little bit earlier when we were discussing this game. They have the better net ranking, 28th in college basketball in effective efficiency, 11th nationally on 2-point shots, hitting nearly 60%. Don't rely on the three, but a very capable three-point shooting team. Villanova is a little bit beaten up. One of their starting forwards is done for the rest of the year. Backcourt is strong defensively, but as a whole, when you look at some of their numbers, outside of the top 150 in both 2 and 3-point percentage allowed. We also just saw them get bounced in the quarterfinals of their conference tournament. I think they have the brand name, but they don't have the team. So give me Utah State to win in the first round, and then they'll crash and burn after that. And then VCU +2.5 for me against North Carolina. It's no secret that this Tar Heels team is different without Caleb Wilson on the court. VCU actually has a better adjusted efficiency than UNC since the Wilson injury. The Tar Heels' lone road win without him came against a bad Syracuse team that lost 6 straight to end the season. I also just don't think VCU is afraid. They played a couple non-com games in the ACC, fared well against NC State, beat up on Virginia Tech in that spot, and to close out the regular season and beyond, we're on a really, really strong run at the end of the year. Won 6 straight, 16 of their last 17 straight up, covered in 3 of the last 4 and 7 of the last 11. So it's even from a cover standpoint that they've had success. I think they get it done here. And we talk about some of the things that we look for in some of these underdog teams. The 3-point shooting element, I think, is going to be key for VCU here. 35th in the country from 3. UNC 216th in 3-point shooting allowed. So I think that could be a tough matchup for the Tar Heels from that spot. And then one of the futures I added in here, I've told you numerous times throughout the course of the day, I like Houston to make a little bit of a run, and +110 on Houston to make the Elite 8. I also did a couple little sprinkles on Final Four and National Champion, +250 and 10-1 respectively.
Really quickly, also Texas Tech, right?
Yes, so I need to make that official. Yes, Texas Tech, Sweet 16, 6-1.
Well, because I wanted to add, I know I have to go to mine because this is going to be mine. Arizona didn't get there. Are you going to ride with me on this? Sum of men's Final Four seeds.
Yes.
You can find under 9.5. So 8.5 is one that's out there. DraftKings has it. MGM has 9.5. As your number. So I laid $130 on some of men's Final Four seeds under 9.5 -130. That's what I'm adding for today.
Justin, as you're doing the official plays for the website today, make sure you have that on mine too. I'm going to play that as soon as we get off the air because I really like that angle.
Looking on the back end of what our best bets are going to be, there is a couple of our colleagues who have this sum under, but they used 8.5. I want to make a note. Yeah, it is available at 9.5 at the same price as under 8.5 at DraftKings -130, but that's over at MGM. So that'll be what I add today too.
Yeah, that Texas Tech, the Sweet 16, it was more of a numbers play than anything else for me. That first matchup with Akron, I know a lot of people think that that's got upset written all over it. No JT Toppin, the way Texas Tech has fallen apart lately. They're still a pretty significant favorite, I think, for a reason in that spot, and then the potential to get either Hofstra or a vulnerable Alabama team in that following game at that number at, bet $100 to win 600 feels like a pretty nice payout for something like that.
Indeed. Sorry, I thought the show was over.
No, we have a whole minute left. How are you spending the rest of your day?
I got local later today.
Right on.
And got to get a good push day in.
You have another workout? Oh, it's push day. There we go, which is not a baby-related thing.
No,
good reminder.
no.
I learned that the hard way.
Working the pecs, got the upper body. We got to keep it going. So my legs feel like rocks right now. So
I am proud of you, though. The 2-a-day thing, I don't know how you do it.
You saw me the other day. I ran at 4 miles with your husband the other day, nonstop the whole way, buddy.
Sounds like a horrible existence.
But
I'm very impressed by you. And listen, I don't give you compliments often because you're not very nice to me. But I feel like it's been cool to see you so dedicated to something like that. Just as
when you come back from your trip, God, I mean, I don't know. It's not like you're gone for the next 2 weeks.
I'm not even going to be able to see you.
That's right.
You're going to turn to the side. You're going to disappear.
It's going to be a new man.
That's a wrap for us today. Excited, though, for this whole week. We're going to have awesome coverage across the network, our show every day, and beyond. And again, remember that March Mania betting guide coming out later on today. You got to get your hands on it. Going to be unbelievable. Follow the money with Mitch and Paul coming up next.